In the heart of a sleepy mountain village shrouded in dawn mist, 11-year-old Kavi sat motionless on the temple steps, his small hands clutching a tattered feather. The feather shimmered faintly, as if touched by some forgotten magic. Last night, his mother vanished without a trace, her voice echoing only in memory. Kavi's eyes, wide and dry, scanned the golden horizon where the sun met the misty peaks. He didn't cry. He couldn't. Something inside him had cracked, silently. The villagers whispered tales of spirits and cursed woods, but Kavi knew it wasn't that. Something far deeper had taken her. A stillness settled over him, a silence so loud it pressed against his chest. The monks chanted inside, but their voices felt distant, irrelevant. A sense of something greater stirred within him. Not anger, not sorrow, but a quiet, burning need to understand. Kavi said, "She always said the feather would guide me when the silence became unbearable." He stared at it, now glowing faintly against the soft light of morning. The temple bell tolled behind him, but Kavi didn't move. In that still moment, something ancient had begun. And though he didn't know it, this silence was his beginning. Kavi walked along the narrow trail behind the temple, where stones whispered beneath his feet, and the rising sun filtered through dew-laced branches. Every breath was a question, every heartbeat, a silent cry. "Why her?" he whispered. His voice vanished into the trees. He remembered her stories, how the feather once belonged to a bird that soared beyond the sky, beyond even suffering. She'd called it a relic from a world before pain. Kavi's fingers clutched it tighter. The forest, though familiar, felt new. Trees stretched taller. Shadows grew deeper. Each step forward pulled him further from who he had been. He paused near a bend where the river murmured gently. In the silence, something stirred. Not just wind, but a feeling, a pull, like the forest breathed with him. A lone butterfly, golden like flame, drifted past him and vanished into the canopy. Kavi followed, not with logic but instinct. He didn't know where he was going. But something inside him had awakened, a yearning for answers. And maybe, just maybe, the feather wasn't just a memory, it was a key. The world felt poised, as if waiting for him to take the next step into the unknown. The trees parted gently to reveal a shallow stream, its water so clear it mirrored the sky. Kavi knelt beside it, staring into his reflection, searching for something more than just his face. His voice cracked. "What am I supposed to see?" The stream whispered back nothing, yet everything. In the ripples he glimpsed flashes. His mother smiling, laughter echoing in slow motion, her hand brushing his cheek. Then, suddenly, her image shattered into fragments. He reached into the water, but it passed through his fingers. The feather caught a breeze and danced forward, landing across the stream. As he crossed, his steps faltered, not from fear of the water, but fear of what he might become on the other side. Trees shimmered differently here, like they remembered him before he was born. He pressed the feather to his chest and whispered, "Guide me." A subtle hum resonated through the trees. The path forward was unseen, yet unmistakable. Somewhere beyond lay a truth he had never imagined, and a pain he wasn't sure he could bear. A rustle in the leaves made Kavi freeze. From behind a tree stepped a frail old woman, cloaked in woven moss and shadow. Her eyes, sharp and ancient, studied him. "You've touched the silence," she said. Kavi didn't answer. She motioned for him to sit. He obeyed, cautiously. "Loss opens the world," she said, "but only if you bleed the noise from your heart." Kavi looked away. "How do I do that?" She pointed to the feather. "That doesn't belong here anymore. It remembers the sky." Kavi's grip loosened. "Was it really hers?" he asked. The woman nodded. "She was never yours to keep, child. She came through you, not to you." Tears finally welled in his eyes, not from pain, but from sudden understanding. The woman stood, fading like mist. "Follow the river until the rocks speak. Then listen." She turned into the trees. Kavi sat alone again, but the silence had changed. It no longer screamed. It listened, As the sun lifted higher, Kavi followed the riverbank. He felt lighter, not in body, but in soul. The silence was now his companion, not his captor. Birds chirped in unfamiliar melodies. Every step felt like walking deeper into a story he hadn't written, yet was destined to finish. Stones beneath his feet whispered ancient words. The feather glowed stronger now, pulsing with his breath. He approached a cluster of flat rocks nestled at a bend in the river. A strange pattern, like script, was carved into them. He knelt and traced them. They pulsed faintly, like the rocks themselves remembered his mother's touch. A warmth spread through his chest. For the first time he closed his eyes, not to escape, but to listen. The wind spoke in tones beyond language. The feather shimmered, then stilled. And in that stillness, Kavi smiled. The journey had begun, not to find her, but to find what she left behind within him. Kavi reached the edge of a vast forest glade, its silence both beautiful and haunting. A rusted gate stood before him, vines woven around its frame like forgotten memories. He hesitated, sensing the place had once held joy, now faded into sorrow. The other pulsed faintly in his hand. As he stepped through, laughter echoed, not his but faint and distant. A child's voice. He turned quickly, but no one was there. Then he saw it, an old wooden swing, swaying though the air was still. "This is where she played," Kavi whispered. He remembered, not with thought but with feeling. The glade had been his mother's childhood home. The trees remembered her, and in their rustling leaves, they mourned her absence. A flash of gold streaked through the trees, another butterfly. Kavi followed it, barefoot now, his feet brushing fallen petals. The deeper he moved, the more the forest seemed to breathe, inhale his sorrow, and exhale memories not his own. The past was alive here. And it wasn't finished with him yet. Kavi stepped into a clearing surrounded by willow trees, their hanging branches forming a veil between worlds. At the center stood a small pond, glass-like, untouched by wind. Reflected in it wasn't just the sky, but his mother as a child. She spun and danced in slow circles, hair loose, eyes gleaming. Kavi gasped, "Is this real?" The vision did not speak, but radiated joy. Then, in a blink, the image faded, leaving only ripples. He dropped to his knees, tears brimming. Not from grief, but longing. He yearned not just for her return, but to understand her path, her silence, her strength. "Who were you before you were my mother?" he asked the air. The pond offered no answer, only stillness. And yet, in that stillness, he felt closer to her than ever. The feather began to vibrate. A soft wind stirred the willows. The veil lifted. A path revealed itself behind the pond, winding toward a deeper part of the woods. His mother's past was calling. So was his future. As Kavi followed the winding path, the forest grew denser. Light filtered in beams, illuminating particles that danced like spirits. The silence here was heavier, like the forest was listening. He paused at a tree with carvings, names etched deep in the bark. His mother's name was among them. Below it, faintly visible, was a symbol, a wing. He traced it slowly, and the feather glowed bright in his hand. A sudden gust sent leaves spiraling around him. Out of the shadows emerged a boy, his own age, with the same face. "I'm what she left behind," the boy said. Kavi stepped back, heart pounding. "Are you me?" The boy didn't reply. He turned and walked into the woods. Kavi followed, unable to resist. He was chasing himself, or perhaps chasing the parts of her left within him. The forest darkened. Only the glowing feather guided his steps. "To understand her," Kavi whispered, "I must understand myself." The boy ahead disappeared into a shimmering veil of fog. Fog wrapped the world like a shroud. Kavi could barely see his feet as he stepped into the veil. Shapes loomed and vanished. Memories, maybe. Voices echoed, laughter, crying, lullabies half forgotten. Then, ahead, the ghost boy stood beside a glowing door carved into an ancient tree. "What is this?" Kavi asked. The boy looked back, eyes sorrowful. The place she never showed you. Kavi hesitated. The door pulsed alive with golden veins. It opened not with sound, but with breath. Inside was a room of light, floating images suspended in space, moments from her life. Her childhood pain, her secret joys, her quiet strength. One image showed her placing the feather on his cradle. She had known. Kavi stepped inside, breath caught. She wanted me to find this, he said. The ghost boy vanished. Kavi stood alone in the radiant chamber, heart pounding. The feather burned with light. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was her legacy. Kavi emerged from the tree transformed. The fog lifted, and sunlight poured through the forest like a blessing. Birds sang as if welcoming him back. He walked slower now, not out of fear, but reverence. He no longer looked for her face in the leaves. He felt her presence within. Her courage had been his cradle, her silence his path. At the forest's edge stood a figure, an old monk with eyes like deep wells. She sent you here, the monk said. Kavi nodded. I saw her. I saw everything. The monk smiled. Monsu Day. Then your next steps must be yours alone. Kavi looked at the feather, now golden and still. I'm ready, he whispered. The monk turned and walked into the valley beyond. Kavi followed, his shadow longer now. Behind him the trees whispered his name, not as a child but as one becoming whole. The journey forward would be harder. But he no longer walked in sorrow. He walked in light. The valley below stretched endlessly, golden fields swaying in the wind, distant birds weaving slow arcs across the sky. Kavi stepped onto the path with the monk beside him, the feather now tucked close to his heart. What is this place? Kavi asked. The field of illusions, the monk replied. Many lose their way here. Kavi walked cautiously. The ground beneath his feet shimmered, not with sunlight, but with memory. Visions rose, his mother, alive and laughing, arms open, a version of himself strong and grown, surrounded by praise and wealth. The images lured him. His steps slowed. It could be real, he whispered. If I stay? The monk's voice cut through, gentle but firm. Illusions promise peace but steal truth. Kavi looked down. The feather had dulled, its glow dimming with every step toward the mirage. He turned away, trembling. The visions flickered, then crumbled like ash. The path cleared again, plain and quiet. The monk smiled faintly. You chose truth over comfort. Kavi exhaled deeply. Desire had spoken, but he had not answered. Beyond the valley rose a ridge of dark stone, jagged and steep. As Kavi climbed, the monk stopped. This ascent is yours alone, he said. Kavi hesitated, then nodded. The rock scraped his hands, his breath grew shallow. At the peak, he found a lone shrine, crumbling, overtaken by vines. Inside, a mirror rested. Not of glass but of still water. He knelt and looked in. The reflection stared back with unfamiliar eyes, older, worn, questioning. Suddenly, the water rippled. His face morphed into anger, jealousy, pride. Flashes of emotions he had never allowed himself to feel. This is me, he whispered. The wind answered with silence. He reached out and touched the surface. The images stilled. I see you, he said, not with fear but recognition. The mirror darkened, then cleared. His own face returned, quiet and calm. The feather pulsed again in his robe. He had met himself, and chosen to keep looking. He stood, the mirror still and blank behind him. The path, downward, awaited. As Kavi descended, the landscape changed. Ruins of ancient statues lay broken along the path, stone faces cracked with time, hands outstretched toward the heavens. A wind howled through the bones of old temples. In one ruin he saw carvings, winged beings soaring above mortals chained to earth. His chest tightened. Feather in his robe grew hot, glowing brightly. A whisper echoed, not from outside but within. Do you seek to rise? Or to understand? Kavi sat beside a broken wing sculpture. He remembered longing to fly, to be more than himself. But now, he asked, is flying freedom or escape? The air shimmered. For a moment, a spectral form emerged, his mother with wings of fire and sorrow. She smiled, not in joy but understanding. Then, she vanished. Kavi rose slowly. No escape, he said. Only becoming. The statues no longer looked tragic. They looked human. He bowed before one, not in worship, but in solidarity. The journey deepened. Night fell as Kavi reached a quiet grove, lit only by moonlight. A circle of lanterns floated mid-air, suspended without strings. In the center stood a man cloaked in shadow, his voice deep and calm. What do you desire most? Kavi stepped forward. Ah, peace. The man laughed, not cruelly but knowingly. Peace is not given. It is carved from fire. The feather pulsed in rhythm with Kavi's heartbeat. The man offered a golden wing, beautiful, glowing, perfect. Take it, he said, and you'll never suffer again. Kavi reached out, but as his hand neared, pain surged through his chest. The wing burned bright and dissolved. The man vanished. The lanterns flickered out. Kavi fell to his knees, heart racing. He had failed. But then, the feather shimmered, stronger than before. He realized the choice had never been about the wing. It was about walking past it. He stood, breath steady. No shortcuts, he said to the dark. I walk. And the forest opened once more. Dawn crept across the horizon as Kavi emerged from the forest's edge. Before him stretched a plain of stillness, where earth met sky without boundary. The air was crisp, silent, sacred. He sat cross-legged in the center, feather in both hands. He closed his eyes. This time, no visions came. Only breath. The monk's voice echoed from memory. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of acceptance. Kavi inhaled deeply, then exhaled everything, fear, desire, pain. The feather faded in his palms, losing its glow. And yet, it felt more alive than ever. It wasn't magic. It was memory. He opened his eyes. The sky had shifted, painted in hues of fire and blue. The wind carried no whispers, only clarity. Kavi stood, lighter than he'd ever felt. The road ahead curved toward the unknown. But for the first time, he smiled, not in defiance but in readiness. His journey was far from over. But he had finally arrived in himself. The plain faded behind him as Kavi entered a narrow canyon, its walls rising like ancient guardians. The air was dry, the wind hushed. The path narrowed until he found himself before a stone archway inscribed with symbols he couldn't read, yet felt. A faint hum filled the canyon, vibrating through his bones. He stepped through. Instantly, the world changed. The canyon expanded into a vast cavern, lit by glowing crystals embedded in the rock. Each crystal pulsed with soft light, casting slow-moving shadows on the walls. Kavi walked deeper. The feather, now dim, pulled him forward as if it remembered this place. In the center stood a spiral of stones, and at its heart, a figure sat in meditation, cloaked in white, face hidden. Kavi approached, unsure whether to speak. The figure raised one hand and whispered, "You have heard the world. Now hear yourself." At that moment, all sound vanished. Not silence, emptiness. Kavi closed his eyes. For the first time, he listened inward. Kavi sat across from the figure, in the stone spiral. His breath aligned with the glow of the crystals. A deep warmth spread through his chest. "Why do I carry this feather?" he asked, eyes still closed. The figure answered without voice, through sensation. He felt sorrow, hope, memory. Visions bloomed behind his eyelids, his mother's silent strength, his own tears he never cried, the kindness he had hidden from himself. The feather grew warm. then hot, then blinding. He opened his eyes, only to find the figure gone. In its place, a stone basin held still water. He leaned over it. The water showed not the past, but what could be, a world where he walked, not as the lost but as the guide. A teacher, a protector, a child no more. Am I ready? He asked the quiet. The answer was not words, but certainty. The feather floated gently into the water and glowed again, reborn. He bowed deeply. This cave had not shown him the future. It had revealed his nature. The cavern faded behind him as he emerged into the twilight of a desert plateau. The stars began to bloom in the darkening sky, one by one. He stood still, gazing upward. Each star felt like a story, a soul, a thread of the infinite. The wind whispered low hymns across the sand. Suddenly, a voice spoke, not heard, but felt. It came from everywhere, yet nowhere. What binds you? Kavi closed his eyes. His mind conjured images, expectations, fear of being alone, guilt over not saving her. These were his chains. And what frees you? The voice asked. Kavi whispered, forgiveness. As he said the word, a soft glow rose from his chest, forming a golden outline of wings, gentle, ephemeral. They did not lift him, but they lightened him. His feet still touched earth, but his heart soared. He opened his eyes. The stars had multiplied. He was no longer afraid of their silence. He now understood. It was not emptiness. It was infinite presence. Kavi walked beneath the stars, led by the now softly glowing feather tucked in his robe. He came upon a circle of stones, ancient, weathered, sacred. As he stepped inside, a sudden gust extinguished all light but the stars. From the darkness, shadows emerged, tall, undefined, murmuring doubts. You are too young, you are broken, you are nothing without her. Kavi stood firm. His fingers brushed the feather, now pulsing gently. You are echoes, he said. But I am the voice. The shadows hissed, but began to fade. The stars above grew brighter. Then, one final shadow approached, shaped like him, hollow-eyed, full of fear. You can't carry what she left, it said. Kavi stepped forward. I already do. He embraced the shadow. It dissolved in his arms. The circle of stones lit up with a soft white glow. The trials were not to defeat him, but to return him to himself. And he was finally whole. As the first light of dawn painted the horizon, Kavi sat at the center of the sacred stones. Wow! The desert was still. The stars bowed to the sun's arrival. His journey inward had ended, but a greater journey was beginning. He held the feather one final time. Its glow faded naturally, returning to its quiet self. It had been a guide, not a solution. A memory, not a magic. He kissed it gently and let it rest on the ground. Wind picked up and carried it into the light. He didn't chase it. He watched. The feather danced upward, caught by dawn's breath, then vanished. Kavi stood tall, his robes dusted with earth and stars. He turned toward the path descending from the plateau. A village waited. A world waited. Not for answers, but for someone who had faced the silence and chosen to listen. The wind carried his name softly. He walked forward, not as a boy lost in sorrow, but as a soul awakened by it. The village came into view as Kavi descended the plateau, now bathed in soft morning light. But it was not the village he remembered. Homes stood, but the people were gone. Silence hung in the air like a held breath. He stepped through the dusty path, past the temple, now cracked and vine-choked. The bell no longer rang. Only the wind stirred. Kavi entered his childhood home, its walls coated in stillness. A memory surfaced. His mother's laughter, a bowl of steaming rice, her hand ruffling his hair. But now, only dust remained. On the table lay a small scroll sealed with wax, a symbol he'd never seen. He unrolled it slowly. It wasn't a message to him, but from him. It bore his handwriting. "You must let her go," it read, "or she will never return to you in peace." Kavi trembled. "I don't remember writing this." A mirror lay beneath the scroll. His reflection stared back, not the child, but a version of him older, wiser, and aching. The past wasn't waiting for him. It had already moved on. He stepped outside, the scroll still in hand, and heard the faint sound of bells, not the temples but wind chimes, calling him toward the cliffs. He followed instinct, the path winding with dry grass and scattered stones. At the edge of the cliff, an altar stood, draped in white cloth. On it rested another feather, identical to the one he carried before. But this one was broken, split at the shaft, edges frayed. "This is hers," he whispered. A gust of wind lifted his robes and pulled his hair back. From behind the altar emerged a cloaked figure. Kavi stepped back. The figure lowered its hood. It was his mother, but not as he remembered. Her face was older, lined with sorrow, eyes reflecting oceans of pain. "I waited for you," she said. He ran to her, but his arms passed through. She was a memory made manifest. "Why didn't you tell me?" he cried. She replied softly, "You weren't ready to hear." The feather cracked in his hand. The truth had arrived. Kavi fell to his knees as the wind howled. His mother knelt beside him, though he knew she wasn't truly there. "You always looked for me in the sky," she said, "but I've always been here, in your questions, in your pain." He sobbed for the first time without restraint. She cupped his face with hands that flickered in and out of light. "You believed I was taken, but I chose to leave." Kavi froze. "Why?" Her eyes filled with tears. "To protect you. I carried a darkness I couldn't pass on." He shook his head. "I would have shared it. That was the danger," she replied. "Some pain must be healed alone." The air grew heavy with truth. The altar burst into soft flames, cleansing, not destructive. Kavi reached for the broken feather. It dissolved into ash in his hands. Then, "I forgive you," he whispered. Her image smiled, peaceful now. "And I forgive you for not letting go." She vanished like breath in winter. He remained, broken, but finally free. The wind carried the ashes away as the altar crumbled into dust. Kavi stood in silence, the emptiness within him no longer hollow, but sacred. From the ruins, something shimmered, a seed, golden and alive, resting where the feather had burned. He cupped it gently. "A new beginning," he whispered. The sky above shifted, no longer threatening but endless. He turned from the cliff, descending back toward the valley. But this time, he wasn't chasing shadows. He was planting roots. The seed pulsed with warmth, not like fire, but like breath. With each step, he whispered her name, not in longing but in gratitude. The path felt different now, not as an escape, but a return. Birds sang unseen songs from treetops. A river glistened below. The world hadn't changed, but he had. He wasn't returning to the village. He was returning to himself. The journey was not upward toward heaven. It was inward toward the earth, toward truth, toward wholeness. Night returned, but it no longer frightened him. Kavi lit a small fire beneath an old tree and sat cross-legged beside it. The seed glowed faintly beside him. He had no destination, only direction. The fire cracked softly, and in its dance he saw not visions but clarity. He took a deep breath. No weight pressed against his chest now. Just air, just stillness. He remembered the swing in the glade, the mirror in the shrine, the circle of stones. They were no longer tests. They were teachings. "I don't need the feather," he said softly. "I carry what it gave me." The firelight flickered across his face, not boyish now, but steady, aware. A shooting star streaked across the sky. He watched it go. No wishes made. No prayers whispered. Only presence. The seed pulsed once more, then stilled. He picked it up and placed it near his heart. The night was deep. But he wasn't lost. He was exactly where he needed to be. Morning came not with brightness, but with serenity. The fire had faded into soft ash. Kavi stirred gently, rising with purpose. In his palm, the seed still glowed with a quiet warmth. A new trail appeared beneath his feet, etched into the earth as if waiting for him. He followed it toward the eastern cliffs where light first touched the land. The wind no longer spoke in riddles. It listened. At the cliff's edge, a stone platform lay with ancient engravings, circles within circles, each pulsing faintly. Kavi stepped into the center. The wind rose. The seed in his hand dissolved into golden light, flowing into the air, into the earth, into him. His eyes closed. A hum resonated deep in his chest. He felt her, not as memory, but as presence. She was in the wind, in the soil, in his breath. Kavi whispered, "I am no longer seeking you. I am walking with you." The platform began to glow. The world did not shift. Kavi did. The sky darkened suddenly, not with storm, but with something deeper. Kavi stood firm as the light around him dimmed. Shadows rose from the platform's edges, figures from every part of his journey. The sorrow, the fear, the boy who doubted, the boy who grieved. They circled him silently, their faces blurred. One stepped forward, voice heavy with accusation. "You left her." Another hissed, "You abandoned the search." A third wept, "You let go too soon." Kavi stood in stillness. His hands remained open. "You are not my enemies," he said. "You are my steps." Figures flinched. "You walked with me. Now, I release you." The wind howled, and one by one, the shadows turned to light, ascending like fireflies. The last one, his own face, stepped forward. Kavi met it with a nod. "I forgive you." They embraced. Light burst around them. The platform shone brighter than day. And when it dimmed, Kavi stood alone, lighter, whole, unshaken. Light cascaded across the sky like golden rain. From it descended a figure, not his mother, but a radiant being formed of memory, light, and silence. It had no face, but its presence was unmistakable. It knelt before Kavi and placed a hand on his chest. From within, something bloomed, wings, not of flesh but of essence, unfurling behind him, shimmering with compassion and truth. Kavi did not fly. He simply breathed. "You are not here to escape," the being said. "You are here to carry." The wings folded gently against his back. The being vanished into golden mist. Kavi bowed, not in worship, but in gratitude. Around him the world grew quiet. Trees in the distance leaned gently. Rivers shimmered, as if in reverence. He turned to descend the platform, not with burden, but with clarity. The gift had not been power. It had been perception. He could see now what was, what is, what matters. Kavi walked into the forest once more, where the journey had first begun. The trees no longer loomed. They welcomed him. Light flickered between branches in soft patterns. The wind carried no riddles, only melodies. As he passed a pool of still water, he paused. This time, his reflection did not shift or haunt him. It met his gaze calmly, wings folded behind. He smiled. "I know you now," he said. In the distance, children's laughter rang out. The village was alive again, not in the past, but in this moment. He approached the old swing. It swayed gently, and he sat in it. Not to go back, but to honor where he came from. His eyes closed. He didn't dream. He listened. The earth pulsed with quiet music. He felt her again, not in loss, but in rhythm. The feather was gone, but its purpose lived on. He didn't need signs anymore. He had become the message. As dusk approached, Kavi climbed a small hill overlooking the village. Lanterns began to flicker in windows below. He sat atop the hill, legs crossed, arms resting gently in his lap. "Aight." His wings, now invisible to others, folded quietly behind him. He watched without longing, without regret. "I am not the same," he said aloud. "And yet, I have never been more myself." A small bird landed near him, chirping softly. It stared at him, then flew off toward the horizon, free. Kavi smiled. He no longer needed to ask where he was going. The path would rise as he walked. The wind rustled the grass. The stars peeked out one by one. He stood, stretched, and began descending the hill. He didn't walk like a seeker. He walked like one who had found, and would now help others remember. His steps made no sound, but the earth felt everyone. Kavi returned to the temple as twilight descended. Its walls, once cracked and lifeless, now glowed with a golden hue from the lanterns placed gently by the villagers. Children laughed in the distance. Monks chanted quietly inside. He stepped through the temple's arch, no longer as a child in search of answers, but as one who had become the answer. The same steps he once sat on in silence now welcomed him like old friends. He lowered himself onto them, folded his legs, and looked out at the horizon. A feather drifted past, not glowing, not enchanted, just real. It landed beside him, soft as breath. Kavi smiled and left it there. A monk approached and sat beside him in silence. "Did you find what you sought?" he asked. Kavi nodded. "I found what I was afraid to face." The monk smiled faintly. "Then you've truly begun." The sky turned cobalt. Stars unveiled themselves. And in that quiet stillness, Kavi felt it, peace that didn't ask for anything. Kavi entered the temple hall once more. The chanting monks turned their gaze briefly to him, then returned to their rhythm. He moved silently past the statues, each illuminated by candlelight. As he approached the center altar, he paused. There was no offering in his hands, only the stillness in his breath. He bowed low, then sat cross-legged before the flame. The fire flickered, casting soft shadows across his face. In the silence, he began to hum, not a song, but a vibration born from within. The chant merged with the monks, forming something older than words. The temple pulsed with gentle energy. His mother's voice was not heard, but felt. She was not above or beyond. She was here, in him, in the flame, in the floor beneath his folded legs. When the chant ended, he opened his eyes. Nothing had changed. Yet everything had. He bowed once more and rose. His time here was done. But his journey had just become the world's. The villagers gathered beneath the starlit sky to celebrate the turning of seasons. Laughter echoed and songs filled the air. Kavi stood at the edge, watching. He didn't need to lead, nor hide. He simply belonged. A young child tugged at his sleeve, offering him a lantern. "For someone you miss," she said. Kavi smiled gently, took the lantern and whispered, "For someone I carry." He released it into the sky. The lantern rose, joining dozens of others, floating like dreams lit by memory. The villagers clapped and danced, but Kavi sat on a nearby bench, eyes following the light as it faded higher. He didn't cry. He didn't ache. He simply remembered. Each lantern was a soul learning to let go, to rise. His featherless hand rested over his heart. There was nothing left to chase, only to honor, to serve, to be. And in that, there was everything. Morning light crept once more across the hills. Kavi walked alone through a field of wildflowers. Dew clung to his robes, sunbeams warmed his skin. He reached a tall stone, unmarked and ancient, and placed both hands against it. "This is where she let go," he whispered. "Now I do too." He sat beneath it, not in mourning, but in presence. Bees buzzed softly. A breeze danced through tall grass, and the world sang without voice. He took from his robe a small pouch, inside it the last grains of ash from the cliff altar. He opened it and let the wind take them. They swirled once, then vanished into the golden air. "Thank you," he said. The stone glowed faintly as the sun fully rose. Kavi stood, dusted his hands and turned away, not with reluctance but grace. He had come full circle, but the circle had no end. Only rhythm. Only flow. Only now. Kavi stood once more on the same cliff where it all began. Below, the world stretched wide, valleys, rivers, temples, forests. But he looked not with awe nor yearning, only understanding. A soft wind brushed his face. He closed his eyes. No feather. No flame. No visions. Just breath. Just being. He opened his eyes to a sky unburdened, a world untouched by illusion. This is what she meant, he said. This is flight. He stepped forward, not off the cliff, but down the path beside it. A trail few saw, yet always there. With each step, he didn't rise. He didn't fall. He walked. And that was enough. The camera of spirit zoomed out, revealing a child walking alone, wings invisible, yet present. The silence was no longer hollow. It was music unheard. In the end, he had not chased the golden wings. He had become them, and the world would never see him the same again.